Imagine this, it's 9 p.m. The temperature has dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Outside the tent, the wind is so violent that even a few steps away means total blindness, just white nothingness. No roads, no lights, no people, no rescue teams, nothing but frozen silence stretching for kilometers. And a mountain that feels alive in the worst possible way. Inside the tent, 9 experienced mountaineers are trying to survive the night. People trained for this, people who know exactly how cold kills, and yet something happens. Something so sudden, so extreme, that they don't act like experienced climbers anymore. They don't unzip the tent, they don't take their boots, they don't grab coats or survival gear. Instead, they cut the tent from the inside and run into the storm, barefoot, half-dressed, into a temperature that can kill within minutes. And that is where the story stops making sense, because there is only one question that matters now. What could possibly be outside that tent, that makes staying inside feel like certain death? This is not fiction. This is not a movie, and it's not a survival exercise gone wrong. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, one of the most disturbing real-world mysteries ever documented, a case that has been investigated for over 60 years and still has no single explanation that accounts for everything. But strangely, this kind of story feels familiar because we've seen it before. Not in real life, but in fiction like the series From. People trapped in an isolated place, cut off from civilization, facing something they cannot understand. Not just trying to survive physically, but mentally. Because once you don't understand the rules of the place you're in, fear becomes the rule. To understand what happened, we go back to the winter of 1959, the Soviet Union Cold War era, a time when exploration wasn't just adventure, it was discipline, status, and national pride. Mountaineering was structured into levels of difficulty, and the highest level was Category 3. Only experienced climbers were allowed to attempt it, and this group chose exactly that level. The expedition leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, calm, methodical, the type of person others trusted without question. He had led difficult winter routes before, he understood gear, he understood terrain, and he understood risk, which is exactly why his death later shocked everyone. This wasn't a group of amateurs, they were students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, engineers, athletes, experienced hikers, people who had already survived harsh winter expeditions. That's why this case became so difficult to accept, because experience was not the issue. Originally there were 10, but one of them, Yuri Yudin, turned back early due to illness. Pain in his legs made it impossible to continue. He left the group before the final climb. He survived. All 9 others did not. Years later, he would say, "Why did I live?" And they didn't. Book him. The mountain called dead. As they moved deeper into the Ural Mountains, everything changed. Trees disappeared, wind became stronger, temperature dropped even further. They were heading toward Mount Otterten, passing through an area known by locals as Kolatsyakal, Mountain of the Dead. On January 31st, weather conditions collapsed, visibility dropped, wind became extreme, they were off route. They had 2 choices, go back into the forest or stay on the exposed slope. They chose the slope, a logical decision at the time, but it would become the last fully rational choice they ever made. The night everything broke. They set up the tent, cut into the snow to create a flat surface, organized their gear, ate, talked, and went to sleep. 9 people inside a fragile shelter in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Then something happened. At some point during the night, something triggered panic, not slow fear, immediate escape behavior. The tent was not open normally. It was cut from the inside, and all 9 ran into the darkness, without boots, without coats, without equipment. But here's the strange part. Their footprints were not chaotic. They were organized, controlled. They walked downhill toward the forest, not running blindly, walking, as if trying to stay calm in something they didn't fully understand. First Death's 2 bodies were found under a cedar tree. They had tried to survive. They built a fire. They climbed the tree, but eventually the cold won. The part that changed everything. Months later, 4 more bodies were found in a ravine. And this is where the case becomes even stranger, because their injuries were not consistent with simple exposure. We are talking about broken ribs, severe skull fractures, internal trauma that suggested extreme force, but with surprisingly little external damage. One victim without a tongue, and among all the disturbing details of this case, there is one that is often misunderstood. One of the victims, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found without her tongue, but this is not evidence of something supernatural or intentional harm. Her body had been exposed for months in extreme conditions, and soft tissue like the tongue is one of the first things to decompose or be removed by natural processes like water flow and animal activity. Still, it remains one of the most talked about parts of the case, because it looks far more mysterious than it actually is. Today, the most accepted explanation is not one single event, but a chain reaction, a possible small slab avalanche, sudden fear response, extreme darkness, hypothermia affecting judgment, and total disorientation after leaving the tent. Because in extreme cold, the human brain stops being fully reliable. It can misinterpret danger. It can distort perception. It can turn survival into confusion. Why this feels like from series? This is where the connection becomes clear. Because the horror is not just what is outside, it's the fact that no one understands what is happening. No rules, no explanation, no certainty, and that same psychological horror exists here. Because the Dyatlov Pass incident is not just about death, it's about confusion under extreme uncertainty. Even today, as more than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass incident is still not fully solved, not because we lack theories, but because no theory explains everything perfectly. And maybe it never will, because sometimes nature doesn't give answers. It only creates situations where every decision feels like the right one, until it isn't. Thanks for watching and staying till the end. If you enjoy true crime content, hit subscribe and press the bell so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next one.